Welcome back, sailors. This is your captain speaking, and welcome to another episode of Bruise News, number 12. Number 12. 12. Anyways, we got some news on what's going on with Brock Lesnar, finally. Well, not finally, it's been weird kind of all over the place. It was as speculated that Brock was not happy with the offer that the UFC was giving him. As we all know, that the ESPN deal that was struck with the UFC only allows the UFC to pay fighters a specific amount per anything else that would come contractually into... Is that a word? Is contractually a word? Or does it mean something else? Would that mean like on the contract as well? I guess we're going to find out. Anyways, on the contract, they can add like house seats and stuff like that, but usually the UFC probably wouldn't do that. They tend not to. A lot of the times they have in the past with Brock and with Conor McGregor, but I doubt that it would happen now after the UFC deal because it was a very strict deal that the ESPN gave them, but it's a much better and lucrative deal for a lot of different fighters because it really puts an incentive on the sport itself and not just talking all that game. Talking is a good part of building up to what a fight is, but at the end of the day, fighting is about fighting, and fighting is about the chess match itself, and that should do the speaking more or less, not just, all the trash talk. It can be fun though, it's entertaining sometimes. Now when you're telling people you're going to kill their family and stuff, that's not really intelligent trash talking, but what can you do? Along with that, so the UFC couldn't offer Brock a lot of money. Well, it's not that they didn't offer him a lot of money. I'm sure that they offered him a lot. It's just with the WWE striking the Saudi Arabian deal that they did, because they're going to Saudi Arabia on June 7th, I believe. With that happening, the UFC is able to make a lot more money. Not the UFC, the WWE. They're allowed to spend a lot more money than they normally would, and that allows them to bring back older superstars that they haven't really used before, like HBK and Triple H had that match against the Brothers of Destruction last year. Well, it was announced that Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, and The Undertaker would all be making an appearance at the Saudi Arabian pay-per-view. It's actually not a pay-per-view, it's a WWE Network exclusive, but it's still as if it's a pay-per-view, like it's considered one, I guess you'd say. Anyways, it allows them to spend a lot more money on superstars when that's happening, and allows it to be bigger because it's huge out there, and they've been trying to get that to happen for a long time. And now that they're running on to the second year with last year's Greatest Royal Rumble, I'm not really sure what the theme is this time around. It's going to be cool nonetheless to have Goldberg, and maybe he even makes a full-time return. And since Brock hasn't signed with the UFC, there's a chance that Brock might make more appearances with the WWE. He might come back part-time the way that he was. Hopefully they don't throw the strap on him again though, because that was just an annoying 3 years that Brock was on and off the champion, and he would show up, like 6 or 7 times a year and defended as many. It was pretty bad. Darren Till spoke out about what had happened on, with his whole arrest. Actually, I just lied. He didn't speak out at all. What he did was he posted a video on Twitter of him just standing over his camera phone and just sweating and just going, like, I don't understand. Like, what does that mean? Like, are you tired of everybody's stuff? Are you sweating life right now? I'm not really sure what the message is here, but that's pretty weird. Like, I don't do that to my people. I don't just send them sweaty messages, because that's weird and that's rude and nobody wants that. Going on, we have UFC 151 tomorrow. So usually I do every 2 days, but I didn't like how it lined up with the Saturday, and I didn't want to pop the video out at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning after the pay-per-view was done. Or after, it's not a pay-per-view, it's just an event. It's UFC Fight Night 151. So sorry if there was some misconceptions about that or a misunderstanding. It's not a pay-per-view. It will be on TV, so that's all good and fine and all that stuff. Regardless of that, it's going to be a wicked night. It's going to be awesome. There's some awesome cards, and there's a few particular fights that I'm really excited about, and we're going to run down the predictions. Now, remember, I am doing horrible with my predictions right now. So if you want to make some money, or you can take chances on me at this point, but I've been very, very wrong. And I'm really hoping that I'm not wrong about these fights, because there's a lot of fighters that I do want to see get that win tonight, or tomorrow night, sorry, and others that I could care less about. So for the first fight, we have Walt Harris versus Sergey Spivak. He's a big burly heavyweight. Walt Harris is like 11-7. You know, not a lot of people know who he is. He's a heavyweight. And then Sergey is also a heavyweight, but he's making his UFC debut. But he has a lot of hype behind him from outside of the UFC. He's 9-0. He's a big guy, good striker, good all-around fighter. And you know, with heavyweights, they tend to get exciting with knockouts, and you could see a new guy on the rise. I am calling Sergey for a first-round TKO. The second fight, we have a Canadian-born Brad Katona. Brad Katona is an absolute monster, and he will definitely 100% be a champion someday. This kid is so, so good. If you get the chance, please watch some highlight reels on the kid. He's so good at absolutely everything MMA related. He's a very good striker. He has great cardio. He's got a great jab. He's got great takedowns, great submissions. He's the whole entire package, and my boy's Canadian, so let's get that. Let's get it. Let's get it going. Anyways, he's fighting Merab Dvalishvili. I think that's how it's said. He's a relative unknown. It's sort of like a testing ground for Brad Katona. Still, he's on his way up, because Brad still has sort of a light record in terms of making your way up to the top, where you have a lot of those top contenders with like close to 16, 17 fights, and Brad's sitting around 11, I believe. He's like 11-0 or 10-0. It might even be less than that, to be honest. I didn't look at it. I just know that the past 4 UFC fights that he's had, he's been absolutely amazing. And I've kept my eye on the kid, and I'm excited to finally see him up on the main card for an event. And hopefully the next time he comes out, he has a spectacular win and he gets a good top 15, top 10 contender fight. I have him winning by decision. Going forward, we have Cub Swanson versus Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos is so awesome. He's another really good fighter. Cub Swanson's good, but I just don't think that Cub Swanson has been able to pick it up to the next level where he needed a lot of his skill to go, and he hasn't been able to place that properly. He tends to get into slug fights, and yeah, he's exciting, but he's not a fighter that I would ever invest in at this point anymore. He's going to be around for a couple more years, but I don't think that he's going to be anything spectacular or do anything spectacular. Shane Burgos, on the other hand, is a young kid. He's very good, and he's probably going to get the win tonight. Cub Swanson is a very, very good fighter, though, nonetheless, and there is a chance that he could win by knockout, by submission. He's good everywhere, but I have Burgos winning by decision, because at the end of the day, Cub Swanson is a very tough man. We have Elias Theodoro, the main event. He has like one of the coolest nicknames. His nickname's the main event, because he's got all that long hair. He's another Canadian boy. I think he's from London. Trained out of Toronto, so he's actually very local to where we are. He's fighting Derek Brunson. Now, Derek Brunson is a good fighter, but he's not a contender. He's a perennial contender, like a Chris Lieben, in my opinion. He's a gate guardian. He's a guy that, you know, if you can beat him, you deserve to be in the top 10. Although he does have a win over Machida and some other big names, he's never really been able to get to that next step, even being a young guy himself. I do have Elias winning this fight by decision. Elias does tend to wrestle more often than strike. It's not that his striking is bad, but it's just that his striking isn't as well-rounded as his wrestling is. The guy is a very, very good wrestler, so I assume that that's the way that the fight will go. Moving on, we have the main event. Okay, so this is where it gets awesome. This is where it gets super cool. I've been waiting for this fight, but it's like one of those things when you're a fight fan. Like, you can't always be as confident and as cavalier as a lot of people like to describe it. They're like, oh, I know my guy's going to win. No. It's fighting, and your dude could get knocked out at any which time. He could get subbed at any which time, and weird stuff happens. It's one of those things where there's a little bit of RNG at play. I'm just kidding. There's not a random number generator when fighters get out there and they're just like, oh, you're going to slip on a banana peel. No, that's not the way it is. But fighting can be random like that sometimes. Sometimes you don't protect yourself and you end up taking a shot that you're not supposed to. You tweak the jaw and that's it. Sometimes you slip, sometimes there's unfortunate injuries, sometimes there's cuts. So there are variables, and there's a lot of variables to this fight in particular. Iaquinta is a pressure fighter, and Iaquinta throws some wicked punches. The kid has some wicked boxing. He's so good. And it's one of the reasons he was able to neutralize Kevin Lee so well is because he has a lot of leg sweeps, and he has a great game off his back because of Serra Jiu-Jitsu. Iaquinta is awesome. And if you haven't gotten on board with this kid, he's not even a kid, he's older than me, but if you haven't gotten on board with Iaquinta being a top contender, then you need to go and look at what he's been able to do his last 4 or 5 fights. The UFC is finally behind the kid. He took fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov on 1 day's notice. He took that fight against the lightweight champion of the world at the time, and Khabib is one of the UFC fighters that people consider to be the best in the sport right now. Khabib is an absolute machine, and for Khabib to finish as many people as he does and not be able to finish Iaquinta, who people essentially gave no chance to, because Iaquinta wasn't even in the top 10, I believe, at the time when he fought him. Or he was like 14 or 13. I think they gave it to, if I can remember clearly, I think they gave the fight to Iaquinta over Paul Felder, because Iaquinta and Paul Felder were supposed to fight. And Felder really wanted that Khabib fight, and they had offered it to him at first, and they were like, listen, we actually don't want to give the fight to Felder because he wasn't in the top 15, and we need a guy who's kind of a top contender, and the only one else on the card who was willing to take that was Max Holloway, who couldn't make the weight. He ended up having some sort of weight cut issues, and then it was Iaquinta. Iaquinta took the fight on 1 day's notice, and he did very well. Like, as we know, Khabib has finished some of the best guys in the division, and he's so good, but he couldn't get the job done with Iaquinta. And Iaquinta looked real good at the end of the fight. He didn't look like he was gassed out. He didn't look beat up. None of that stuff. He did very well. And he's a guy who just beat Kevin Lee. He's beaten lots of other contenders, and his style is really, really good for Cerrone. Cerrone, on the other hand, is just a veteran. Like, he's not even at that age where he's super veteran age. I think he's like 34, so I mean, he's still got some time left if he wants to. But the guy has something like 27 fights in the UFC, or 24 fights in the UFC. He has the record. He has multiple records. He's got fight of the night records. He's got win records. He's got TKO records. The dude is awesome. It's not to take away from Cerrone at all. I just never really been a fan of the guy just because of his demeanor and how he talks and the way that he walks around the camps, and apparently he's a bully and all that stuff, and nobody likes a bully. Nobody likes a guy who's kind of like that. But to take away from his skill is something you cannot do. Cerrone is an absolute monster. It's just with his style, with his kickboxing style, he tends to be a textbook kickboxer. And textbook kickboxers, they really need space in order to apply the pressure that they need. You see Cerrone throw a lot of leg kicks that set up the high kicks. You see him throw a lot of head, body, head combos. He throws a lot of combos, and he tends to pepper people until he can land one hard shot. Now, when that one hard shot comes, it's usually the right high kick, the right back high kick. And when he lands it, most of the time, I would say about 70% of the time, when he lands that shot good, he knocks you out or TKOs you. So that's something that Iaquinta has to watch out for, because Cerrone is about 6 feet tall and Iaquinta is about 5'9", so there is going to be some reach difference, and that's going to be something that needs to be closed off. But as I said, Iaquinta is a guy who likes to close the space and throw a lot of punches, which is good for a guy who needs to set up his striking. So with that being said, I do have Iaquinta winning. I have him winning in the first round, I believe. I think that it's going to be a shocker. I think that Iaquinta is going to get to Cerrone fast. I don't think that Cerrone does well under pressure, on top of the fact that he also needs to not be under pressure when the fight is happening. And I think that that's going to get to him fast, and Iaquinta is going to score the knockout. So I thought something cool that I would do at the end of every video, and this video is actually a bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but I was blabbering a little bit. Anyways, something that I'd like to do for the next 5 videos is each video at the end, I'm going to name a top 5 fighter in my opinion. So today we're going to do number 5, and at the 5th episode we're going to do number 1. And this is the best fighter of all time, in my opinion. So starting with number 5, the best fighter in my opinion. Now, when I say best fighter also, I must say that means how they walk around the cage, how confident they are, the people that they've beaten, how good they are, at what they do. So with that being said, I think that the 5th best UFC fighter that the UFC has ever had is somebody who I personally am not a gigantic fan of, but I will always show respect to a guy like him because of how good of a fighter he is. And that person is Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is phenomenal. He's such a good striker. In fact, I would put him on the same level as Anderson Silva any day. If people ask me who do you think is a better striker between Anderson Silva and Conor McGregor, I would honestly have a toss-up because some of the things that we've seen Conor McGregor do are almost like he's living in the future or that he's magic. Like the Eddie Alvarez fight, I've talked about that before. He absolutely, the ending combination that Conor landed, and if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. The ending combination that Conor landed on Eddie Alvarez was like a 4-punch combo into a knockout, into a TKO, while Eddie was falling backwards. Like he was landing shots at perfect range, with the perfect speed, with the perfect accuracy. Like that's not something that you just learn from fighting over and over again. That is something that is a natural skill that he has had since he was born. That is something that nobody will ever be able to obtain. It's special to him. And it's not saying that other fighters won't be able to do what he does or other fighters haven't done what he does. But when you watch how smooth he is in transition, standing, throwing at different levels, his switch kicks to the bodies, his roundhouses to the head, his roundhouses to the body, his sweep kicks, his spin kicks, his capoeira kicks, his punches, absolutely everything that he does is smoother. It's so smooth. I don't know. I was going to make some sort of metaphor there, but there's not really a metaphor for it. It's just he's so natural. It looks so natural. It's almost as if he's dancing. It's almost as if when Conor's fighting you, you're fighting a man who has absolutely no fear in death. He has no fear of being knocked out. He's absolutely confident in how strong he is and how fast he is and how good he is at punching people in the face. And that is one of the reasons why he's number 5. He has beaten some of the best guys. He beat one of my favorite fighters, Jose Aldo. He beat him in 14 seconds or 13 seconds for a title fight. Absolutely crushed me. All my friends were there. It was terrible. Everybody knew I didn't want Conor to win, and everybody was a Conor fan. It was terrible. But you can't take away from that man. He's absolutely phenomenal. And he's number 5 on my greatest UFC fighters of all time. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for watching. You got to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a good one.